Hello all, and thank you for joining us this evening, or it could be afternoon for you, depending on what part of the world you are in. And welcome to our webinar for performing arts internationally, international performing arts. And I'm going to introduce you, or my webinar friends are going to introduce themselves in a second. But before we get started, I'm just going to show you a couple of housekeeping things so that you know how to manage on this platform. You can ask questions on the box on the right in the little chat section. And there's a guy named Trevor who's already said hello. Hi, Veronica. And please feel free to ask us questions at any time throughout this session. If for any reason you drop out, log back in anytime via the email link. Sometimes you may go in and out in terms of hearing us, so always just log back out and log back in if you would like to reset the audio. And if you have bad internet and we're a little bit choppy for you guys tonight, a replay is available and will be sent to you 24 hours after the session and is available for 5 days. So you can always watch us later if your internet is sucky for tonight. So that's just a few things for you. And what I'm going to do now is stop this slide presentation, and I'm going to get these guys to introduce themselves. Now we all know each other, so they're going to tell us. We're going to tell each other. We're going to tell you guys how we all know each other, and then we're going to kick on to talking about their careers and working internationally. So Sophie, would you like to start? Your microphone's off, I think, girl.
Uh-oh.
No, shit. Maybe we'll start with Johnny. Johnny, we'll start with you while Sophie figures herself out.
I'm Johnny Kim. I'm from San Diego, California, and I'm currently the artistic director of Totem over at Cirque du Soleil. And I know Anna Rob, well, we all know Anna Rob from the House of Dancing Water in Macau, way back when, yes.
Wonderful. And where are you now, Johnny?
I'm currently in Las Vegas.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Sophie, you're going to have to bounce out and come back in, hun. So if your microphone isn't working, so you go back out and come back in. Fanny, you introduce yourself?
Yeah, hello. My name is Fanny. I'm French. Excuse my English. I'm currently the associate director on the Jean-Paul Gaultier Fashion Freak Show. That we were touring internationally, but we had to stop. And yeah, I'm a dancer and a choreographer.
Wonderful. And Heather?
Yes, my name is Heather McGee, and I'm from Connecticut. And I've had a 23-year career as a performing artist, and 20 of it has been working with a company called Momix as one of their principal performers, as a dancer illusionist, and as a collaborator on our creative projects with our full evening length shows. And we do a lot of commercial work too, and we do quite a lot of international touring. And in between, somewhere in between the 23 years, I took 6 years.
Oh, she's frozen.
Is there sound?
There, Heather? Oh, it's going so well so far. So Heather's just, can you hear her, Johnny, or no?
I cannot hear. Heather's frozen, but I hear Sophie now. So
Yay, I exist.
Wonderful. All right, jump to Sophie while Heather has frozen. So introduce yourself, Sophie.
Oh, my life. Okay, I'm Sophie Duncan. I am primarily a dancer and a choreographer, but over the years, I've sort of developed into being, I guess, a acrobatic generalist, and my main discipline that I'm working on at the moment is pole dancing. So most recently, I was working with Cirque du Soleil as the dance captain, pole artist, and dancer for 2 shows that were on a cruise ship in the Mediterranean. And other than that, I'm also teaching. I run a small company called The Foundry, which is pole dance and dance workshops. Yeah, and that's it in a nutshell, really.
Wonderful, wonderful. Well, thank you for introducing yourselves. We had a little bit of a pre-discussion the other day, and there was lots of topics we wanted to talk about. So I'd really like to get started on, I know probably one of the first questions people are going to ask is how to get work internationally. And and what are the factors that play into getting work around the world. So who wants to start talking about that?
Okay, I'll start. The thing is, when it comes to the entertainment industry, there's a lot of research that's involved. So the first thing is that you have to kind of find out what kind of companies you want to work for, see them online, see where the auditions are, and then see how you can be a part of that, whether you submit through email with your video content and your resume or CV and headshot, or if you can attend in person, which sometimes can be, you know, kind of complicated for some if they're strapped on money and cannot travel. But in order to have international kind of exposure, you need to do the research to figure out where you can apply and submit your materials to be able to have a chance to be in that company. And that's the start. And once when you get into that, it actually opens up a lot of doors to understand other companies that are out there, different shows, different theaters. And then you start to find your niche of where you're interested in performing. And then those become dreams, and then those become a reality. So it's kind of a domino effect, but it all starts from submitting yourself or auditioning in person to see if you can get into that.
Would you like to add to that, Sophie?
I guess more on a personal thing, really. Like, I think it's important that you, when you're kind of trying to access the lifestyle, really, I think you have to consider what kind of person you are, especially when it comes to, do you love being at home? Do you need to be with your family at all times? Do you need to be connected to like your home in any way? Because it's like, I think for me, I'm an incredibly independent person. I have been since a very young age. And when you start to investigate these kind of careers, then you've got to consider like that you could be away from home for a long time. Because generally speaking, for things like the House Dancing Water or most Cirque contracts, they're usually like a minimum of 2 years. So, you know, you've got to put that into perspective. Like, it might be your dream job, but sometimes when you get there, it could be like, oh my goodness me. Like, not only have I got to learn a show, I've also got to make a whole lot of new friends. And I might have to learn a whole new culture, which is complex. And for some people, and I'll use Macau as an example, because we all know, like, Macau itself is a very confusing place. And, you know, you have to have a very good balance between your work life and your social life. And I think if you're the kind of person that enjoys getting lost, kind of being a little bit concerned, maybe being a bit scared sometimes, you're the perfect kind of person to work internationally. If you're the kind of person that needs to know where they are at all times, where their mum is, where their dog is, where their boyfriend, girlfriend is, like, international careers can be tricky, and you may have to manage it a bit better.
Yeah. I think to add to that, the word is adaptability, for sure.
Yeah, and that's one thing I want to bring up about, like, diversity and you know, adaptability with different skill sets as well. And I think all of you have multiple talents, and it's something that you've had to utilize when you
in your own art, but also how opportunities arise, how they happen. Because, for example, my entry to circus was completely by chance. My first year out of university, I was probably like most artistic graduates are. You're kind of in the city you graduated, and you're like, let's see if I can get a job of any description. Yay! So I was basically doing auditions for everything because I was so poor. I may as well go and probably get a free workshop for 3 hours than, you know, go and pay £12 for class. So I would go to loads and loads of different auditions, mostly dance ones. But I did the House of Dancing Water audition, and to be honest, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know where Macau was. I didn't know that it was a giant circus show. I didn't know that Franco Dragón directed Cirque du Soleil for so many years. Like, I had no idea. And it all just happened. And so I arrived as a dancer into the show, but then suddenly the world opened to me. And I was like, not only is it circus, but we had a giant pool. I learned how to high dive. I learned scuba diving. I learned to work with a giant company. You know, and I think that for some people that's terrifying. So I think it's just good to just go into the industry with an open mind, regardless. I did my degree in dance, but, you know, if I'd stayed down that track, it would have been a very, very tough life for me so far.
Yeah. And I think we discussed this.
I'd like to say something about that.
Oh, go ahead.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I was going to say I ended up leveraging my strongest asset, which was being classically ballet trained, but not as a ballet dancer in a ballet company. And I got a lot of different jobs in the commercial world, in the modern or contemporary dance setting, especially there's a lot of work in musical theater. If you have a specialty in classical ballet, there's plenty of roles available. So, even like commercials could use dancers that have the ability to, let's say they need somebody with legitimate point work and classical ballet experience, also in television and film. So I always thought of myself in my younger years as wanting to be a ballerina. But then when I realized after my first few jobs when I was 17, 18, 19 years old, there was a lot more money and a lot more opportunity for me if I used my ballet skills in different platforms. So I got out of the professional world of being in a professional setting of being a ballet dancer only and thinking of myself that way, and moved my skill into all those other platforms. And that opened up a whole world of possibilities. By the time I was just turned 19, I had already gone to Europe and done like Phantom of the Opera because they had a European tour going on. I'd been offered cruise ship jobs. I had been offered television gigs, all for ballet. And then in addition to that, I was able to sing somewhat well enough to justify also taking other roles in musical theater. And
I've never heard of you sing.
Very financially rewarding for me.
That's exciting.
So I would say leverage your biggest skill, but just not in that tiny market, because I wasn't the best ballerina, but I had other skills that I could use in other settings, and ballet was my strength. So I used that and I leveraged it. And so everybody's got a different case and a different strength, but think outside the box. We're not just a ballerina, let's say, or you're not just a pole artist, you're not just a singer.
That's interesting when you say I was not the best, because as time passed, I realized that being the best at what you do doesn't really matter. It's important to be good and to try to be the best, but it's more how you interact with people, how you take things seriously or not. It's not only about being the best. Like you might be the best dancer, but if you have a terrible attitude, then maybe people that don't want to work with you. So it's not only about being the best at what you do. Of course, you need to be good and to be gifted and talented to be an artist, but you also need other things, human things. Again, I'm having a hard time saying it, but being the best, it's not the only thing that matters when it comes to the industry. So you can, as you said, if you sing a little, then that might be enough to be somewhere. If you act a little, that might be enough to do like a commercial, because your profile as a dancer, maybe other things, maybe. So that's interesting to me.
One question I had for you, Fanny, was that, like, so all of us are English as our primary language. What was the experience for you like going out to work internationally? Obviously, your first language is French, and you may or may not have known English very well. Do you think that was a hindrance to you, or how did that affect your transition to working overseas?
Well, weirdly, it didn't affect it so much. Nobody really cares, but I didn't understand nothing when I joined the House of the Theatre. I was just not speaking English, and I was just expecting that I would understand what's going on. So I would like go to other French people and be like, what just happened? Is it important? Do I need to know that? Do I need to understand that? And I tried to use as much as I could my awareness and availability to just understand what was going on. And at some point, I just had to speak English. So language barrier wasn't really a thing. I just went for it. And eventually, there is always somebody who is going to tell you like, hey, that way. And then you understand, and then you follow. But language wasn't really a barrier. It was a social barrier for sure, because building a new life and meeting new friends when you don't speak English, it's a bit difficult. But I was living with a nice English lady, Sophie. And so, you just have to throw yourself in there. But it is difficult if you are not within a company, but if within the company people are really willing to help and have empathy and compassion, and people will help you if you try your best and if you try to catch up, and if you're not scared to talk, even if you do mistakes, whatever. But people will people will help you, so it's not really a barrier. But then you need to learn it properly to be able to manage other things. When I went into the position that I am now, I needed to know a lot of technical terms about stage, like about the lighting, the SFX, blah blah blah, and that scares me a little bit. But then you just ask and learn and remember it. Like you just need, don't be scared about language. It's not even a thing. Body language is a thing.
Yeah, body languages.
How important were connections in terms of you guys working into the industry, in terms of knowing people, knowing where to audition, knowing how to, I mean, you know, because for me, I'm not in the performance thing, but for us, it's a lot about who you know and how to access those people to get in their face. Is it the same in performing arts?
Absolutely. And I don't think there has to be a massive effort. I think when people hear the word networking, it's already daunting, because I think people envision like a big conference where you have to go up to people into a bar and have these conversations. And although there's an element of that there, it's similar to what Fanny was saying about how you present yourself, because we are the most vulnerable people as artists, in the sense that we have the talent that we possess, but then it's how you present it with your passion, with your personality, with your attitude. And in doing that, that's how you also make really good connections, because if you're approachable and people want to talk to you and people want to work with you, that goes a long way as well. And then the networking happens naturally because you work with these people that want to work with you, that want to speak with you, that want to get to know you as an artist and as a human. And that expands all these open doors to where it goes even further. Which goes down to the point of, you know, how you are as a person in that moment, whether it's first impression or the last impression, is the huge deal, because somewhere down the line, they may know you and other people may know you from other people. And then you'll find yourself in a position where that job at hand is there in front of you. And if you were not a nice person, or if you had a history of being, you know, difficult to work with, that plays into it as well, where your networking process now comes to a halt because of actions that you had from before. Not that it's a huge comparison, but it's similar to like politicians.
But it's like people
go into it and
But for sure, production will ask around, like, hey, do you know this person? Is she or he nice to work with?
Exactly.
What do you think? Like, this sometimes matters much than talent. Like, somebody who will be very hard to work with might not have as much chances as somebody that might be less talented, but good people to work with. It doesn't really work all the time that way, but sometimes that can happen.
And people can see if you're not being
I'd
genuine.
like to chime in on that. Yeah, but for those people who have chimed into this webinar who don't even have a network to pull from because they've never been employed yet, what do you really have in terms of your network? You have your teachers. And for my most valuable job that I've ever had the opportunity and the luck to have, it was directly my mentor and my ballet teacher made a direct phone call.
Wow.
And this is somebody that my network was like two people. I had two teachers, you know, but they were valuable to me. And then that opened up the whole door to this bigger idea of then you get the actual job and then you talk about the bigger network. But when you're not even working yet, what do you have besides your resume and being eager? Well, you have somebody, hopefully, that can vouch for you in terms of the legitimacy of your training, how diligent and motivated you have been, how serious you are about it. And they are a reference for you. If they don't make the phone call, at least they're always going to be on your resume. And you always tell the person that you're auditioning for, please call my teacher over at the school of blah, blah, blah. He or she would be happy to tell you about, you know,
my graduation project, or the last thing that I performed, or the choreographic project I worked on. Everybody has their own situation, but leveraging your own teachers / mentors is always the first step before you get out into the big wide world of auditioning too. So have that in hand and use that.
That's how I got my first job as well. My dance teacher in college.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
that's amazing.
if it wasn't for her, I wouldn't have stepped onto my first professional contract with Jean Ryan Productions on Norwegian Cruise Line when I was 18.
That's a cruise line, right?
Yeah, it was literally a semester and a half of ballet and jazz at the college, and she was like, "I know Jean Ann, she's gonna love you. I think you should audition. This is the career you want. And even though you don't have anything on your resume, I suggest you go. I know her. We can make this happen.
Yeah, she'd vouch for you.
Just expose yourself and see what happens, and she might be interested in the skills that you have." And she was, and I got the contract in like 3 weeks after I auditioned, and then boom, that's what set me on this path.
On the trajectory
of
things.
That's cool. Amazing. And I think that it's important. Like, I remember when I was young, when I was like 14, 15, 16, and knowing that I wanted to be professional, you have to have in the mindset already that you're professional, that you're not a student, that you walk into the room and you're auditioning. You walk into the room and you're learning and you're professional from the very beginning. It's not a casual thing, because that same energy that you show up with every single day when you are taking your class and you're training and trying to be professional, it won't be any different when you go into that audition. You will have already been prepared because you walked in every day present. You walked in every day professionally, making sure that you had yourself all ready to go physically, well taken care of, wearing whatever you're supposed to be wearing, having your hair the way it's supposed to be worn, preparing yourself as if it's an audition. Honestly, it really, it gives you the edge. And then you're not nervous when you walk into those auditions that have hundreds of people in them.
I wish somebody would have
you walk
told
in
me
and
that
you,
at
and
the
you
beginning
hold
of
your
my
head
career.
and you own it. You own it. Honestly,
Heather's got to be the performer.
I already am that.
No, that's good. I wish somebody would have told me this, because that would have helped me. Like, I lost a lot of time learning that by myself in audition and being just resilient. And okay, let's try again. But
Now, Noelle has a great question, and I think we should answer this one. Have you had a conflict within your network in terms of recommending a friend for a job, but maybe they weren't a good fit? And how did you go about approaching that?
We're like, I would say that there's definitely some people that would essentially catfish you. Like, I've had it where, and I basically, this person absolutely stabbed me in the back. Like, I essentially got them onto a gig, and then as soon as they were there and they were comfortable, they made my life a living hell. And I've heard that happen to so many people. And I think that's just crazy to me, because I'm like, you basically build over time like great relationships with people. And like we just said, I will recommend anyone here for anything, because every single person here has only ever been wonderful to me at any point in my life. Yeah, we've even had like discussions where things haven't gone perfect, but professionally, we're great people, and I know that, and we're all reliable. So like, it's crazy to me that someone can build a relationship with you on a personal level so that you trust them. You see them in class, you see them in professional environments, you help them get to, a place, and then they just literally like stab you in the back. And, unfortunately it happens, but it's something that you have to deal with yourself and go, I could kick up a huge fuss about this, and then I can make myself look like an idiot, or I can be like, we're done now. And then you just move on. And that itself took me a long time to deal with, like, accepting that someone's done me bad. And I go, I'm not going to make myself look bad. All I can do now, and it's actually quite a powerful thing, I know that you're a terrible human and I never, ever have to see you ever again. But I'm going to smile at you, and I'm just going to be really professional, and I'm just going to continue my job. And then behind the scenes, this is where your network is breaking. And already with this particular person, it's a long journey, a long journey, and you don't have to blow up on that day. Play the long game, don't play the short game.
And
Interesting.
Sorry, I'm always very hesitant to recommend anybody unless I know they're absolutely going to nail it. Because obviously your recommendation comes with credibility, right? So if you're going to recommend somebody and that fails, I would rather not say, you know what, sorry, I don't have anybody for you, or this is the person that I know and this may be their strengths and weaknesses, and you can interview that person and try that for yourself, or obviously audition in your case. So I'm very, very hesitant, and unfortunately that means that my list is quite short. But the people that are on my list, I can, like I say, you throw at anybody. And for me, I don't ever recommend anybody from a performance point of view. I'd be recommending from my point of view. So I think that would be, obviously performance ability, maybe I'm right or wrong, can be a matter of opinion, right, in terms of whether they're going to be a good fit for a particular show. But you were going to say something, Johnny.
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, it gets interesting too, because the more you work with people, the more contacts you have and the more friends you have. As you progress in the industry, you know, that the friendship becomes a leverage to where, you know, once when I became an artistic director, the amount of people that have approached me for letters of recommendation for all kinds of things. And, you know, I had to really tune into the idea that I can't just hand these out like candy, because my name is placed on it as well. And friends are friends and the professional world is professional world. But also when it comes to a recommendation for something very specific, where I know that the skill set, in my opinion, even though it's subjective, may not be a perfect fit, I too will not put my name on the line to recommend something that I don't feel 100% is appropriate or fits the molds, just because then I'm putting myself out there as well and have a reputation to protect as well. So that can be a difficult thing when it comes to having a conflict in networking, because honesty and transparency has to be there. We can be friends and still be open and honest about what you can be recommended for and put forward for, because it's both names on the line. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. Victor has an interesting question. He says, can you discuss any cultural differences in networking, UK versus US, different companies, any ideas of what is acceptable or awkward? Have you ever experienced, you know, coming from one country to another and being out of place in terms of cultural differences, or has that not been much of an issue?
For me, it hasn't been an issue, just because if you come into it like what we discussed earlier with an openness and an adaptability, I think you can go anywhere as long as you have that mentality or that approach, just because that gets you far. Because at the end of the day, regardless if it's different cultures, we're all human at our core. And if you know how to navigate the world in that way, then you will be successful in any way possible. Which brings it back to the beginning, where if you don't feel like travel is one of your things that you're interested in, and you don't think that you can be adaptable from being away from your family, all those things come into play when it comes to paving your own success.
Right.
Although there is definitely differences that I had the opportunity to notice between culturally, like especially between France and the rest of the world. But yeah, I was really surprised. Like the way of working for every department is really, really, really different, and the adaptation that we had to face with the show that I'm working at the moment. We built the show as a French team, and then it got sold to a UK production, and wow, I mean the differences were so huge that we had a big hard time to understand each other and to work together, because just the core of it wasn't the same at all, and nobody really was trying to understand each other. So yeah, there is definitely some different ways of approaching all departments regarding the culture, but probably between UK and US not so much, but between France and UK, yes.
A small fun fact, though, is that you have to, if you have a network, do your best to ask as many questions as possible and do some kind of form of research. Because for the smallest detail, I can go back to my days when I was auditioning in New York. I didn't realize that what people wore to the audition on the East Coast was completely different to what we did in LA. I did not know that until I rocked up wearing what I thought was fashionable, trendy, kind of something to stand out. And then I looked up all the New York dancers and realized oh my gosh, I clearly do not fit in. And it's okay to stand out, but you might be standing out for the wrong reason. So you kind of also have to gauge what kind of questions and research you need to do for that.
What were they all wearing on the East Coast? I must know.
It was a little bit more demure. Everything was a little bit more pulled back. Everyone wore a little bit more black. Like there were some fun things, but in LA, it was like who had the craziest hairstyle and the most colorful top and like the trendiest like pants and like jazz shoes that were actually Puma sneakers. I mean, it was all kinds of things, right? Like I think it was a little bit more commercialized and street, and New York at the time, and it could be so different now, was a little bit different. And I didn't realize that, so.
Oh my gosh. But then I like, for me, like if I go into an audition, like I've done auditions mostly in the UK, but then I'll do like, and I've done a couple of things in like Sweden and like in Europe in general. And I think, I think it's okay to do a bit of research, but at the same time, you do kind of have an edge. If you're different, if you're a bit of a weirdo, I did a random audition in Dallas, Texas. And at the end of the audition, I literally went there, did all my things, I had a great time, got through to the end, everything was wonderful. And at the end, they were like, so where's everyone from? And everyone was basically talking about America. And then they're like, hi, I'm Sophie, I'm from Chesterfield in the UK. And everyone's like, oh, like, and the thing is, it's suddenly like people might have noticed you in the I don't know, the workshop, the convention, the audition, whatever, and you will just look different. And it's good to be different, but only if you own it. If you don't, I wouldn't say like, go to an audition with this image of I should look like this.
It can't be falsified. Stuff to be authentic.
No. Yeah, and to me, like my clothing really dictate the way I move. So if I'm going to go to a contemporary audition, yes, everyone wants to see lines and everyone needs to see what your body can do. But there's certain shirts that I don't really do a lot of auditions now, but like back in the day, there were certain shirts that I would only wear for auditions purely because I knew it made me feel like a certain thing. So, there's definitely elements to your audition outfit, because essentially if you're a performer, it's your interview shirt, like you wouldn't rock up scruffy to an interview for something, I don't know, like a bank. So your like demeanor and what you're wearing in your audition is it's important. It's something you need to think about, definitely.
Kimberly has a question on how important is college to get into the international industry. Anyone want to weigh in on that?
I went to college, but not everyone did.
Yeah.
I didn't go to school. I started working when I was 17, so I can't speak on that behalf. I think it's on a real case-by-case basis, and it certainly depends on so many factors.
Yeah, it's the same in stage management as well. Of all the people that I know, it's about 50 went through the industry and 50% went through college and into the industry. It probably then comes down to the individual. Having said that, there are certain countries where visas are easier to get if you have a college degree. And certainly in parts of Asia, that becomes a very easy factor. And if somebody's trying to, and we should weigh on this, Johnny, because we talked about it the other day, the timing and the accessibility of you for a particular role or job counts a lot. And for somebody or a company that's trying to get you into a country quickly, if you have a degree, that can fast track depending on if that's a requirement to obtaining a visa. Otherwise, if you don't, you have to try and find and produce a whole lot of other documentation that warrants your employment in that country. So was it you, Johnny, that was saying the other day about the timing? I'd like you to weigh in on that because I think it was an important point.
Yeah, I mean, I think when I was just an artist, there was a lot of moments where, you would audition for things and you could be narrowed down and called back to you and like 3 other people. And that you have a really good chance of landing this role. And then you don't get it. And then you go back a second and a third time and the same thing happens. And, there was a lot of feedback at that time that said, it's all about timing. It's all about timing. Your time will come. And that really didn't make that much sense to me. And yes, I think we have to stress the idea that roles out there will have specific needs as far as the ability, how they want this character to be portrayed, or what kind of skills you need for that. But at the same time, now that I'm on artistic management side, the definition of timing is a little bit clearer for me. And now I understand a little bit better. And basically, I can use a couple examples with Cirque, Volta being the first one, where we needed a contemporary dancer that could be a lead role, but as soon as possible. And, you know, after Trump got into presidency, into that administration, having people get work visas to come into the States was very difficult. And since we were on such a time crunch, we really needed somebody soon. So we had to narrow down the search for this role down to only Americans, not even Canadians. So when it comes to that, that means there's a heap amount of dancers that would fully fit this role, but then the pool narrows it down to just Americans. And so all of these people missed out on that opportunity because of this one circumstance of timing. The second example was the same thing when I needed a replacement in Europe for a very specific gymnastics background rings artist. And because of the dire need and the circumstance, I needed it quickly, then it only narrowed it down to European candidates. And then that list went really, really small. So I may not have chosen the best candidate because of that narrowing down, which means the timing of it all is crucial. But of course, the artist that's applying has no idea of the circumstance. So with that being said, I would just encourage people to continue working, to continue auditioning, and to continue submitting, because you never know when your time will come. And it may be a circumstantial moment like what I had experienced on a couple of my shows.
Right. Interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'd like to say something about that too. I found that in my earlier years, I was able to source work by going outside of my circle, in that I was based in New York City, running in the same circles as everybody else, doing my marketing, sending out my tapes. I even had a beeper way back when. I was like in it to win it.
Yeah.
But I remember they had like Backstage Magazine, and they had a section, West Coast auditions and Florida auditions. I used to fly down to Florida to audition for equity dinner theater shows, because that's how I could get my equity card faster than if I stayed in New York City. So you have to be creative too. If you want to get in one of those unions, let's say, where there could be more of a wealth of opportunity for you later, you don't necessarily have to do it where it's all hot and happening. Go out, reach outside of the circle. And I found that when I auditioned beyond what was like a normal distance, even if I had to get on a really cheap flight that I could like luckily get last minute, I'd show up to the audition, like Sophie was saying, and they'd be like, what the heck are you doing here? And they were so much more interested because they could see how eager I was, how I had planned it all. And I would literally fly in, do the audition, and fly out the same day. Like,
I've done that before for sure.
I did this several times, and I actually got work, like a few months at a time, summer stock, equity dinner theater. I did a European tour, again, same circumstance, because the talent pool that is in other smaller cities isn't as big and isn't as challenging. So I was basically being a bigger fish in a smaller pond. Don't be afraid of that. There's nothing wrong with it. Again, put yourself in that position, where you're standing out, and it's not just about what you're wearing at the audition. That's also something to consider.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also, there is a sense also of fashion in that, because for some job, if you are like looking at some specific job, at some point in Paris, I don't know how is it in the world, but at some point in Paris, there was very fashionable to be small and really sharp in your dance, and all the dancers need to be the same height. So somehow for quite a few times, I never get those auditions because I'm taller and I don't match. And then at some point, that's very fashionable to be super tall and skinny, and so you get some stuff. Like it goes to the timing thing that Johnny was saying, that it's also the fashion that goes on at the moment that can stop you for getting things or not. It's less like this when you're looking for character specifics, but if it's like a commercial or a TV show or whatever, you need to match and assemble. At least you're a lead, and this is another conversation. But if you are a dancer, you need to match an ensemble and the vision that the choreographer or the producer have, and you need to match those criteria of fashion at the moment.
I could never keep up.
It's fast paced.
I don't know if I'm saying the name right. Anya Anderson was asking, how do you keep yourself stable financially between roles and jobs? And do they come regularly for you, or are there downtimes? And how does that work? Are you all freelance? I know Heather is not, and Johnny was not until Cirque du Soleil when I went down with COVID as well. But yeah, talk about staying financially stable in this industry, because that is an interesting topic.
I think that's really good to be balanced. So I think everyone wants the big job with the big money. Like, obviously, everyone wants that. Doesn't matter what industry you're in. So for me, I've been really fortunate in that basically I graduated my university in 2011, and then since 2012, I've worked only as an artist in some capacity, but only as an artist. And I was always ready, because I was that person that did do. I was a chef, I was a bar manager, I was a waiter, all that kind of stuff before when I was at university. But then when I got into my career, I was like, right, okay, here, I'm now. But you've got to get a good balance between when you've got a great job, which pays a lot of money, like, you know, if you got like a 2-year contract, then have your first month and enjoy yourself and spend all your money, because for some reason you're like, oh my God, I have money. But learn real fast that you need to save your money right away. Absolutely. Don't waste your time and figure out your budget. Do a budget system. It was actually an artist at House Dance in Water that we had like a random financial class, and it honestly changed my life. Like, it was so good. Thank you. Yes, go. But basically, he taught us how to put all of our money in like different envelopes of like what you wanted, what you want for your life, what you're going to spend on a daily basis and stuff, and what you wanted to save for. So for me, my personal, the way I do it is when I get a big job, I know how much I can reasonably live off, and a little bit of, I would say, I call it my party fund, which is basically going for dinner, buying clothes, stuff that I don't need. And then I save my ass off when I've got a good job so that if I don't have a great job, or I have to do lots of freelance work or teach for up to 6 months, then I can still have my wonderful life and not have to go and do another job that's not in the artistic industry. And then I can also have this really great balance of like kind of big epic commercial work, which, you know, is really fun and entertaining and really organized and scheduled. But maybe artistically it doesn't give me everything. So that then I can choose smaller projects, or I can go and work in countries where the average wage isn't as big as the UK and stuff, and I can make choices, better artistic choices, because I save my money. But always be ready to take jobs that you might not necessarily want to do. Like, I've been a follow spot operator for like a Christmas season at a pantomime, which for me was fine because it was like I was still around the theatre, I was still in my universe, and I didn't have to go and be a waiter again or something like that. So yeah, saving is my best advice.
Yeah.
It gives you so much freedom. You can go back to study wherever you feel. You can take workshops. You don't have to work on things that you don't really want to. If there is stuff that doesn't match you or your personality, you don't want to have to force yourself. It's so important to be free financially. Very important. Somehow you need to make that work.
And for anyone that's listening, a young artist or wanting to get into this professionally, I think it's really important that you stress the idea of savings, because it's going to be so easy for you to, let's say, land a gig that takes you internationally. Everything is new. So you want to take a ton of tours. You want to see the sites. And yes, by all means do that, because it's a chance of a lifetime. But you have to save that kind of money, because a lot of these contracts can be as little as 3 months, 6 months, 9 months. And when these things don't contribute, at least for Americans, to a 401k for your retirement, or necessarily into Social Security for later, there's a lot of things that you're not contributing into. So you do need to have that savings for yourself, as well as balancing, experiencing the world and having lifelong memories. I made that mistake when I was 18 on my first contract going to Europe, and I didn't save a dime. Literally did not save a dime, because I thought it will be the only chance in my life that I'll do this. And I kind of just kept that mindset. So I did everything. I saw everything, and it was great. But those opportunities can happen again, especially if you think in that mindset. If you think this is the last chance and you're just going to spill all your money, well, then you're going to come out of this completely broke and potentially unemployed for God knows how long until you find that next gig. That might only be 3 more months. You know what I mean? So it's you have to find that balance. And what Sophie was saying is absolutely true, because you don't know what's going to happen next, and you want to have that financial freedom, like Fanny was saying, to where you can finish that contract, fly, like Heather said, to New York or to London or whatever, because you have that money to do so.
Right. Yeah. And you can leverage the fact that you're in another country to maybe teach a workshop. I know I don't do it myself, but a lot of my colleagues do. And they'll teach classes at local schools while we're on tour. So they wake up early, they go teach a 10 o'clock, modern class or improvisation class or whatever their specialty is. And then they're back at the theater later at 5 o'clock to actually warm up and do the show. So, you have a lot of times, in my experience, like when I've been on tour, you have the whole first part of your day free. That can be income producing time. You're there kind of held hostage in a way, especially if it's somewhere you've already been, let's say. You're there for work. So you might as well do something with that time instead of sleeping in every day. Honestly. So,
I love the formula.
Teaching a class.
The income part of the day.
You know how I think.
The income part of it.
Teaching, doing workshops, and then I've done things like light administrative work for other companies that I've been dancing for or performing for. I've offered to work for them in terms of doing paperwork. I've offered to do company laundry. I've offered to be a seamstress. I've offered to be a go runner, to do supply and manage the supplies and the first aid kit. I've, to teach warm-up classes. All these little things added on to my paycheck. A little bit here, a little bit there. $50 here, $20 there. You're already there for the job. You're already doing it. Might as well take a couple extra hours and see if you can capitalize on it even more. So I tried to use my time like that.
Yeah, time is expensive.
To make
time is money.
Even more money on top of my paycheck. And the last thing that really helped me in my first 10 years of my career was I tried my best to just live on my per diem. When I was on tour. And I was given $40 a day, pizza and beer sometimes for a whole week. But you know what I mean? It's when you're younger, it's easier. But definitely that was one way that I could manage my paycheck, because when I was younger, my paycheck wasn't very sizable. And so my per diem, I always knew I was going to get this amount of cash every day, which is common for a touring contract. Everybody's different, but it can be common. And then I always knew my money was going to be every 2 weeks or every month put into my account, and I wouldn't even need to see it because I was just using my per diem. So that's one other way to kind of manage yourself if you're not as organized as Sophie.
But saying that, I don't think you have to make your artistic choices depending only on the paycheck. That's just my opinion. Like, you can also make artistic choices that will not make you that rich, but that might make you a better artist or a better interpreter or a better performer.
Yeah, something more enriching.
Like shit.
And I would agree. I would agree to that. And I think the time between when you leave school or graduate from university into your early 30s is the perfect time to attack the market in any way, shape or form and get as much experience as possible. Because once you become a parent or you become in a relationship or something that is more solid, those that loose and fancy free becomes it's not as much of an option, and you've got to make certain cohesive choices. And then, if you've got that bandwidth of lots of experience and credibility there, then you've got more freedom in your 30s and into your 40s into being able to continue a career and be a parent and take other aspects of your life on as you do. And so, one thing that's a common thread with all of you, and actually a lot of the performers and people in the industry that's worked internationally for me, is enthusiasm. Enthusiasm for the industry, passion for the arts, passion to learn, to, like Heather said, take an extra buck or do a follow spot or make your own little side projects while you're on a full-time job and continue to participate as a group or participate with the team or learn from each other. And that was something that was always very unique at the House of Dancing Water, is that everybody learned from each other. And it was a wonderful collaborative environment. And when you are on tour, you're in this little family. Where you've got that opportunity. When you're on resident shows in, say, Las Vegas, and people have their own other lives, and they come in, they clock in, do their job and leave. But when you're in these little bubbles of groups of people, it's such a huge opportunity to profit from long-term relationships, learning more about your craft, maximizing your time on a day-to-day basis as you perform in the evenings. And from somebody who's worked for many years as a stage manager, I was often astounded at the amount of time that performers would waste in a day, because being a mother and working 12 hours a day as well as doing that, I'm like up at 6 a.m. and I'm back into bed at like 1 a.m. and there's people that like sleep half a day, and I'm like, oh my God, like you've got so much time to
oh my God, but you're superhuman. You get so much done.
It's so true.
So, like Heather said, I think it's profiting from that, and on levering that into our next conversation. And we will go back and answer some of those questions that are coming in. So we will say, but a lot of you being that enthusiastic, and that have then also transitioned into management roles, right? And I want to talk a little bit about that, because time goes quickly in these sessions. And I think one of the things that we should talk about is how you transition from performance into other careers and or management, choreography, artistic direction for you, Johnny and Fanny, and how that transition happened, and what you would advise other people looking to progress through a performing arts career from just simply being a performer into those kind of roles.
Yeah, it's a big topic.
Yeah, it is.
Johnny, you start, and we'll go around. Or Heather, you go for it.
Okay.
Who's
you want me to start? Okay, I'll say it really quick. I mean, transitioning out of it being on stage for me is very recent. And I know we have the whole pandemic going on, which basically I was going to be quitting anyways, so it's just kind of handed to me. So here I am, not performing anymore. But once everything opens up again, my new role is to basically pass on what I've been performing for the last 20 years. It's my job to teach the newest dancers that are coming in half my age the repertoire that the company has, and they want to go another. They're waiting for this to be over, for the doors to be opened again, and they want to hit the ground running. So it means that I'll have to start teaching new dancers, my own replacement, and those dancers who have moved on and taken other positions will need to do some coaching. So that's a natural transition for maybe somebody getting off stage. I didn't take the route to choreograph or to become a artistic manager of sorts, but I still work very closely with my directors and the new dancers coming in to help facilitate the continuation and success of the company moving forward, even though I'm not on stage. So passing the torch, that's one transition that could be feasible for someone.
Yeah. Other common transitions, similar to even Fanny and Sophie and myself, is a captaincy role, or any kind of role that's in a leadership position. So in some places it could be a dance captain, it could be a show captain, it could be an acrobatic captain, or whatever terminology they use in that sector of the world. But in doing that, that's kind of a step into artistic management, because you have to keep integrity of the show, but the essence of it is managing people. And I think when people think of artistic directors and they think of positions like that, they immediately think of the first word, which is artistic. And so they think, okay, all these people that have this creative vision and all of that entails with that. And although that is true, anyone that's in management in any part of the industry, whether it's entertainment or not, I think we have to remember that it is being able to lead a group of people, to manage a group of people. And so the difficulty lies in understanding if that's something that you can do as a person, or you can learn through it. And in those steps as being a captain, I think you can identify if this is something that's going to be for you or something that you're going to still have to learn through as well. Because as we talked about earlier, I think people underestimate the captaincy role because you have to, one, be a leader, but two, you're also then leading your peers and your friends and your colleagues. In this kind of gray zone, trying to manage up and down and kind of linearly, if that's a word.
Yeah, while you're still on stage.
Yeah, while you're still on stage. I think that's a very difficult role, and I don't think people understand how difficult it can be because you're now in the middle. And I think there's a lot of learning to be had in that, and the learning curve will then propel you into the success of being an artistic manager or a director, or just some insight of what it is that you want to do. Because some people will go into that role and think, too much responsibility, maybe some politics that I'm not aware of and I don't want to be a part of. So I think I'll just step back, and then you will find out what your actual path will be. But managing people, it's very sociological and psychological as well. And you kind of have to either attain those skills, learn those skills, or have those skills innately to be a good leader.
Yeah, I think it's quite what you said. Like, Johnny is a very good leader. I think we've all worked.
Yes, he's
we've worked under
exceptional.
Johnny at some point. He's very good at that. Because the thing is, what is like quite I've only in the last few years started to work as a dance captain. So I've had 2 dance captain roles, and the biggest and most complex part of it is the management of humans, and that weird step up from being part of the team that you're on stage and you do things, and now I have to be your friends, but I know what I'm like when I'm in a rehearsal. If I'm tired and we've already done this rehearsal 17 times and I want to go to sleep and I'm hungry, I can be a bit of a dick. It's all right. But as the manager of that team, you kind of have to learn quickly, like, okay, as a performer, I would feel like A, B, and C, but from the direction which is above me, they want X, Y, and Z to happen. Right, how can I manage this so that everyone's kind of all right? People are probably going to hate me a little bit, but they know that they have a job to do as well. And it's a really weird position to be in. Whereas when I work as a choreographer, I kind of have so much more power because it's my artistic vision that I don't really have to care about people's feelings as much. Like I do, but I'm also building the show. I'm building the concept. And if my friend Horia is still in the chat right now, is the director I'm normally working with in Romania, like, as a choreographer, your role as a sort of an artistic manager is less complex because what we bring for, I don't know, 8 or 10 hours in the day in terms of building a show is that is us getting an idea and throwing it out. But also we've done like, I don't know, another 12 hours where we've been sat like in a pub or we've been in our living room of our apartment and we've been like thinking of all these ideas and really, we've had all these arguments with each other, and then now that's happened and now we give it to you. So it's less stress. Whereas being an artistic manager, a dance captain, artist director, anything like that, you're managing a show that's not actually your idea, and you're having to be the best you can to make that show look amazing. And I think, as my experience as a dance captain, I'm a contemporary dancer through and through, but the both dance captain roles I've had to maintain are 2 hip-hop shows. Like, it's not my style at all. But, I had to make sure the choreo was cool. I had to make sure everyone was clear. If a new person came in, I had to make them look as good as they can. So then you have to learn new skills like, okay, I'm not a hip hop dancer, but this person is. So I'm going to start bringing you into my rehearsals. I will teach you the choreo, but this is how it's supposed to look and how it looks good. So you have to understand your strengths and weaknesses as well. I know how to be a great performer. I'm not a great hip hop dancer. So between me and my team, you can also lift people as well. There's certain people that, again, it's all about networking. You can help bring your team and make them your army, and they will do anything for you. Or you can become this weird dictator that gets sassy and like, no, well, I'm the dance captain, so this is how it goes. No.
Yeah.
That doesn't work. Not that I've ever been that, unfortunately, because I've definitely, in the 2 roles I've had 2 pretty positive experiences. I've never had to be that person, but it's an interesting step.
Yeah.
And again, it definitely tells you what you might want to be. You might be like, I'm never doing that again. Or it might be like, okay, maybe I could be an AD or an assistant AD one day. But yeah, learning how to deal with people is wild, interesting, but very useful when you figure out how. And get mentors like Anna and Johnny to help you.
And to come up on that really quickly, I think people might want to know how do you get a captaincy role? And the thing is, if you innately have this desire to help people and have an initiative to kind of rally the troops and get people together, whether it's the attitude of positivity or, okay, they want this act to be cleaner, let's work on this, or it's not about like taking the role, but it's about the initiative of you being eager to help your friends, your peers, whether it's, oh, these counts are like this and the movement they said was like this. People will see that you're taking that initiative. They'll see your eagerness to help. They'll see the passion that you have for it. And then that's when they will recognize it as you being a potential candidate to be a captain or in that leadership role. And sometimes it's just as simple as also coming into an office and being like, I'm interested. Do you think I qualify? And who knows, it might come for you. But it's all about the initiative as well. And that has to be authentically coming from yourself. It cannot be forced, because then that will showcase a leadership style that is also inauthentic, which will not meld well. Right. And so you just got to be yourself as well. Hope that helps.
I think Leisha. Hi, Leisha. Leisha and I worked together many years ago on the Beatles show in Las Vegas. She asked, and it's kind of similar to what we're talking about. What about transitions where you're being asked for more experience, but you don't have that yet? So either trying to get into the industry or you're trying to move into the captaincy position. And you just mentioned there is like to, show that you're interested or anything like that. But what if you're not particularly sitting in a company and have that opportunity? What if you're looking for work and you're looking to move forward? What are the challenges of trying to transition your perception from being a performer to a choreographer or a manager? Like, how do you, from my face value, what I see is you guys work on your own projects and you make your own videos and you do these things that are external to what you're getting paid for. But how do you get that in the face of potential people that will employ you for such a role if it's all been off your own back or your own stuff?
I think it's exactly that, is having projects. So when you're comfortable, like we kind of said before, when you're in a resident show and you have all this time in the day, then do stuff. Just keep doing stuff, because if you're, time is super valuable. And it's like now, like with actually a prime example is now, I was doing my contract with Cirque up until the 14th of March. And anyway, my contract would have naturally run out on the 28th. So I lost 2 weeks, but that's not the biggest thing. I knew that I was going to have a gap between now and about May, for about 6 weeks. So I already put in place that I was going to do a workshop with the Foundry, which is our new company. And the Foundry was born out of time, of having time where me and my friend had something to do. So it's like, you might not be working in your number one position. Like you want to be prima ballerina in the Royal Ballet. Like, good luck. But anyway, go for it. But like, whilst you're trying to get there, you can be doing so many other things. Like, you are a talent. You can do stuff. And if you want to have a management role at some point in your life, whilst you're being a performer here, like, already start to make things. You can make solos and videos on your own. That's pretty easily done. Back in the day when we could like see and touch other people, you can get your group together and you can make a video and you can make your own choreographies, and then it exists. At least it's a video you can send to people. Or if you are even more sort of a manager in your mind, then start a little mini company. Like the Foundry so far, all we have is we have a bunch of time because everyone's at home doing stuff like this. So we're like, right, we are supposed to be a studio workshop course that we go to studios and we deliver 1 or 2 day courses in dance and pole dance. We can't do that anymore. What else can we do? We've essentially built a studio online because we have time, and because both me and Lisa, we're that kind of management person. It's like, right, okay, what can we do? So we have like a full week of schedules. We do artistic classes, we do technical classes, we do fitness classes, and we've built this thing. So then now after this is all finished, I have a product that I can show to people. It's like, look, I'm a manager. I manage a business. I'm a great leader. I can do all these things. And, you know, and then you have things like you have to produce things to make people believe in you. You can't just be like, I'm a great leader because I feel that I get on really well with my family and my friends. That's relevant, but it's not going to help you be a manager. Like, you need to prove that you can project manage and that you can put schedules in order and that you can manage your time well and that you can produce like not just good stuff, but professional looking, basically put in a nice wrap, tied with a bow product. That's basically what you do in your spare time when you're not working on a show. That was quite long. I'm sorry.
No, it's good.
That was great.
And on that, in terms of being marketable, and there's a couple of questions about making people marketable, either for performers and for technical people, I guess, as well. I have heard of friends that, especially in New York these days, that can either get or not get a job because of their Instagram followers.
I've heard about that. That's rude.
And so how important do you guys see social media presence and followers? I think that's a particularly perhaps more of an American thing in that particular location. Maybe I'm wrong, but I know that it's become a larger conversation of, you know, how much of a public figure you are as a performer. And I wanted you guys to think about, you know, is that important, and also how important is that profile online?
I think, unfortunately, in this day and age, if you have not built a career up to where we are currently in this day and age, and we still have more to grow, social media is kind of a big factor, unfortunately, just because everyone is now online, everyone's looking, and so to put yourself out there and be relevant, or at least on the surface to be, there has to be some kind of element of social media. But I mean, if you go on my Instagram right now, I don't have thousands of followers, and nor do I care to even post because I'm already in the position I am in. But if you're an up and coming artist at this point in time, it is really disheartening to know that, you know, Instagram is kind of a thing where people have like thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of followers, and they're not even 18 yet to showcase what kind of dancer they are. So I kind of have mixed feelings about that, because sometimes people see that for what it is and only for what it is. And some people think too deeply into the Instagram posts and base their decisions based on that. I think there's just a lot of superficial judgment when it comes to that. So it's relevant. It's not something that I'm like 100% behind, but I think that people need to tap into, which I think naturally is occurring in this day and age when people are seeing how much social media is relevant in people's lives.
Yeah, I've heard about this with some professional dancers, like a guy who I worked with called Day Day. He was like doing tours with loads of people like Missy Elliott, and he went to like the Ariana Grande audition, got to the final 3, but wasn't picked just because a guy he was with had something like 75,000 followers, and he only has like 13,000 or something, which to me is huge. And I think that's just actually completely wrong, because I get why they're doing it and I don't care, but basically they're using your followers to market themselves. And if you're Ariana Grande, I think you should be all right with your millions and millions of followers on Instagram. You shouldn't be using your dancers to be promo. That is, it just is poor and useless and boring, and I think it's wrong. And honestly, I would think that it's you using people, and it should be made basically illegal. Like, I don't think you should be able to do that, because it's your having an Instagram isn't important. If you don't want to be on social media because of the many dangers that we were talking about just before we went online, you shouldn't be judged on that. And I think it's wrong, and it should never ever happen in the industry. It unfortunately does, and it seems to be more of a commercial world kind of thing. But
yeah,
I do think it really damages the industry for one very simple reason, is that not everything is free, but a lot of it is free. For example, you go on Instagram, you can learn a choreography from anyone that puts it here for free. So your work as a choreographer, when you create, doesn't value nothing anymore, because you have some free on the internet. It's the same for the music, it's the same for the movies. Not everybody, sorry. Some people put their work, their artistry work, for free on the internet. So how can something else have some value? Why should I pay?
It devalues.
Yeah, thank you. What should I pay for something? You know, what should I pay for advertising when people have 1 million, 2 million followers, and I don't need to pay them to advertise my show because this dancer will. So it's just like it gone too far. No, sorry.
No, but it's true. I agree with you.
Am I that old?
It is true.
No, but I just, you know.
We're just so old school, Fanny.
Like, if you give everything away, then what have you got left for work, you know?
Well, that's their problem, though. Maybe that's their problem, because someone like you might just give a blurb of a 10-second clip or snapshots.
I actually
and
don't have an Instagram on my name.
I don't either. Sorry, it's true.
It's okay.
I'm working. It's been like 15 years, I think. I'm working, and I had a Facebook, but I never really used it, and I don't have an Instagram for my dancing. I just have an Instagram because I make jewelry on the side. That's it.
Well, and it's a testament to the word of mouth being more.
Call me because your Instagram page is amazing. I don't have one, but I'm still working. So there is the truth that if you have an Instagram and a lot of followers, like, some job will look for you because you look good and you can reach many people. But there is also ensemble work. There is also quality that matters, and that is not findable on the internet, and that's okay, I think. But maybe not for long.
Regardless of our opinions on it, it exists. And it's there, and it's something that people have to navigate, and it is a factor that maybe obviously when we were starting out wasn't so much of a factor. But I think, you know, if you're finding that you're drowning in competition for attention and your followers, and you can't build your own followers, I think it comes back to what Heather was saying, to go find your big fish in a small pond moment or place where you can stand out, as opposed to trying to compete with that aspect. And you know, it's not solely our industry either. That is the same thing for many other industries these days. You know, a lot of people rely on their self-promotion to get it, and also having hired a lot of people internationally, unfortunately, the first thing I'll do if I get a CV is try and find out for more information about that person, and I'm going to Google you.
Yeah, right.
I've had to hire people from overseas to a job, never having met them. So I want to know as much about them as possible. So for me, I always caution people about, be really careful about how you represent yourself online, and how you present yourself professionally, because it doesn't matter if it's your Facebook or your LinkedIn or your Instagram or your thing. If you present yourself as a hot mess of a person and I'm hiring you as a stage manager, I'm going to be like really cautious going into that interview, and I'm going to ask you a lot of questions about it, because I've got to take all that information and make the best judgment. When you bring somebody to another country, it can cost up to $6,000 to bring somebody to a country, or to hire them, all visa costs and flights and relocation and things like that. So we're making a huge investment in you, and Johnny would also know this too, to hiring people into the companies that he has to do. You have to be on point, and so I think really that social media representation, followers aside, is really an important aspect. And you can be absent; that's totally cool. Then I've only got the interview to go on, right? So that's not necessarily a bad or good thing. It's just whatever is put out there, you want to be careful about how you paint that picture of yourself.
You essentially have an online
don't have
CV,
any false misrepresentation. If you're not really a classically ballet trained dancer, don't try to do pique arabesque. Take a picture on point or something if you really can't deliver that. Exactly. You're going to break your ankle.
Yeah.
You know, so be honest.
Which goes on another branch before we leave the social media conversation, is that for anyone that's young that is listening right now, just know that Instagram and social media is really good for inspiration, but please don't think that that's what makes you the best artist. because there's so many people out there that have leg extensions to their ears, and they can do 9 pirouettes, and they can do triple backflips and all that stuff. And although those things are good, I don't want people to think that they have to copy those things and just strive to get that leg, these pirouettes, that backflip, because there's more content to just skills out there that make you a well-rounded artist to be hireable, marketable, and all those things. And I just encourage everyone to use it as inspiration and motivation, but not to copy and use that as an expectation to dictate and define who you are and what you are as an artist.
I took about 25 and they just put the good one on, so whatever.
Yeah.
Because I do that, so.
Been there.
Well, actually, a lot of the audition videos, even for the show we worked on, it was always about getting the right shots for what you could actually physically do, not the great, beautiful shots or the great, amazing, like, if you're just showing you a picture of in a certain acrobatic position or something like that, you're like, great, but how did you get into that? And I need to see how you got into that, because I can't hire you on the fact that I just saw you in that picture. And so actually the audition tapes, go out. I want to see you do this, 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 and this, and this, to see if you can actually physically qualify for this show. So I think it comes down to, our circular conversation back to what are people really looking for? Do you have that ability, and is the timing right for you to be in the right place and the right time to get on that gig or on that show? So, yeah. Mm-hmm. LaShawn Prescott says, I'm interested to hear your views on the fact that someone can put their choreography on YouTube, and if ads are on the video, depending on the song used, all the money goes to the owner of the music, copyright owner, when the intellectual property of the choreographer is not rewarded. So ownership online with your work. Any thoughts on that?
That one's tricky. That one's tricky because let's say if we use a choreographer that's super well known in the world and he has a YouTube account and he or she puts their content and their choreography on, but they've got enough subscribers to where they have that deal with YouTube to where they get a portion of that money because they have so many views, then it goes to them. But when it comes to the music, to be honest, that's not anything that I know. I can ask my ex-boyfriend though, because he is in entertainment law and he deals with things like this, because it is an interesting topic to discuss, knowing that, yes, we would think that choreographers should be rewarded in that way, especially since it's their own artistic input to the world. And that's where it gets a little bit tricky. And that's all I can talk about on that, unfortunately. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think it's hard to protect a choreography. It depends on the country and on internet. How can you even protect it? Your only way to protect your own choreography is to not to show it and to give it for free. I think that's the only way to protect it, which is sad because you want to show your work. So you just have to do it for free and for the will of doing it.
But I guess that's why stuff like Instagram stories is kind of useful, because you can put snippets of things and in 24 hours they're gone. Which is kind of nice. And actually, like for pole dancing, for the pole dancing industry, like it's weird because actually the way, despite everything we've been talking about how to not get followers and everything like this, like the way that pole dancers become famous and the way that I promote myself, and if I'm going to be in a show or whatever, everything happens on Instagram, everything. And if you learn a new trick, you post it and you put it online and you show how you got in and how you got out of it. Like it's kind of normal. So in a weird way, like you, I think as an artist in certain aspects, you put everything out because you're basically showing everyone what you can do. And also it's kind of a way to like, look what I just invented. You should learn this. Oh, and if you can't do it, you can book a private with me and I'll show you how. Like that, it's kind of like that. So yeah, in terms of my own choreography, I would be reluctant to put a full piece of choreography online. But if I'm doing something like a pole dance competition, all of my pole routines are online. But I guess that was the point. I performed it. It exists. It's gone now. But I think, I think one of the things that you always have in a favor as a performer, that any choreography that comes out of you comes from a huge artillery of your experience, right? So just if somebody copies that thing doesn't mean that they can come to a show and build 10 other different ones that are of that unique flavor, right? So really, if somebody's got that ability to choreograph or direct something, that comes from all of the things that build you up to that point to have that ability. So
that it's very thin. If somebody copies your stuff, it's very thin on that, because if they haven't really come that up from their own inception, then long term that's not going to serve them well in the industry, right? So unfortunately, it can still be fickle, because people get jobs and then they get jobs from jobs and jobs from jobs. And so it's still, at the end of the day, a competitive market. And there are people, you know, honestly, I've worked with many, many artistic people across my career, and some have been brilliant and some are like, how did you get here? Like, how did you get here?
Yeah.
And somebody who's worked super hard most of my life, when you see somebody who's cruised into it and got a position that is absolutely amazing, and you know 100 people that would be better off in that role than the person that is, it's hard to take sometimes. But that's the reality of our industry, and in any industry, let's be fair. So it's just got to keep putting your best foot forward, I guess, and try and stay competitive and in front of it, and keep. I'm for putting your stuff out. I'm for getting yourself out there and showing what you're capable of, because visibility is credibility these days. You know, you get seen and people are watching you, then you're more likely. Who knows what match will be struck by some director or some choreographer wanting to have you on their team to help collaborate. And if you're a ghost and nobody knows where you are, then the chances are slimmer. But, you know, people navigate their path in many different ways. So,
and a good showreel is a good showreel at the end of the day as well.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Short and sweet.
That could be a whole other webinar, let's be honest.
Oh yeah,
I know, right?
Let's not open that Pandora's box. We'll do another one about good showreel.
How to do a good showreel. Noelle has a good question. Do you ever feel lost or question what you would do outside the industry? How far into your future do you plan or look?
I avoid it at all costs.
Sorry, can you repeat the question? I don't got that.
Saying, do you ever feel like you're lost on your path of what you're doing artistically? And how far into your future do you plan or look? And plan for maybe even, you know, what's plan B, plan C in terms of your career? Do you have those, or is it, how far ahead are you planning?
I definitely have plan A, B, and C.
A, B, C, D, E.
Yeah.
I always have
But actually, to me, they're all artistic. Like my plan A is that I perform as long as I can, because that's for me, performing is electricity and wonderful and marvelous, and I love being on stage and I love performing. So that's always plan A. But plan A/B is to choreograph as long as possible. And if it's on big, giant mega shows, that would be, you know, plan A of the plan B. But then, you know, otherwise I will choreograph. I'll choreograph myself. There's plenty of like smaller things. Like I said, I'm currently trying to apply for a grant so that I can make small choreographies. And then plan C would be like, if at some point I just can't be bothered to be creative anymore, which I can't imagine that would ever happen to me. Right. And I just want to work within the arts. There's millions and millions of jobs out there that are sort of less creative, but they're still relevant and they're artistic. And for me, just being around the theatre is fine. As long as I'm around it, or I'm around creative people and I'm around performance and colour and stuff, that's my plan C. I don't know what that job is, the colourful job. It's just the plan C.
Yeah.
Okay.
I always knew once when I started performing professionally that I always wanted to be a part of the entertainment industry. So I guess my plan B is something like Sophie was saying, attached to the theater in some respect. But in reality, there's a lot of people out there, let's say management is not their path. And so being an artist for as long as they can is that. And then after that is a whole big question. So if we were to tackle that question in that way, I think it's just important to find what else it is out there that you love doing. Because clearly, if you have a passion for something, it'll be easier to get into that because you're so dedicated to it. So for example, if I'm in here as an artistic director, but I have to think outside the box of what I would want to do as a plan B or C outside of entertainment, then I would really have to dig deep and figure out what it is that I want to do that I would love doing every day as well. And in the past, I've toyed with a lot of different things, and some of them may sound cliche and some of them may sound ridiculous, but you know, I think for me personally, I've always measured it down to, if I won the lottery, what would I do with that money? And for me personally, I just want to learn everything, right? And I know a lot of people would like to to like buy houses and all this stuff, but I just want to learn, because if I had the finances to just support myself and then just go out there and learn, I've listed like I want to learn how to barber. I want a chef, so I would love to go to culinary school.
Yeah.
Like there's many things that I actually know that I would love to do. So that's a starting point. What it is that you want to do outside of entertainment that you know that you do, if you haven't figured out yet, it's okay. But in time, you will start to let yourself try different things while you're performing or while you're in the entertainment industry, just to have an idea of what it is out there in the big wide world that you might want to do as well. And that could be those points.
It's also, it really depends who do you meet. Like the encounters that you make during your career might change your plan A, B, or C dramatically, and that's okay. And that's nice to be. I think that's nice to be available to that and to be like, oh, that wasn't the plan, but that sounds good. I should investigate that direction. Sometimes there is good surprises when you don't plan things.
Yeah.
Yeah. And Heather, you've transitioned into something else other than performing. So how has that transition gone?
Yeah, pretty well. While I was still working last year, I got my license to be a real estate agent here in the state of Connecticut, and I'm working on getting it in New York as well. And I think it's in line with my original plan to be able, as an independent contractor, as an agent, a real estate agent, I can make my own hours. So it would allow for me to teach, to possibly still go on stage if they needed me to be, and neither relationship is contractual. So I can just kind of make it flow in my life as I want. And at the same time, I've transitioned into having someone wonderful enter my life unexpectedly. As Fanny says, you never know who you're going to meet. And now I have ambitious plans to grow my own food, which is also very relevant to what's happening with the situation here. So I have a 150 square foot garden at the top of a hill here. I planted all the beets, 2 rows of beets yesterday, got the carrots in. And
I'm a big fan.
I have actually 38 chickens. And today I just got 6 piglets.
What?
And I'm not kidding you. Like that's one of my main focuses in this transition of this new time in my life, because as a performer and touring, as you guys know, we're always eating out. You don't always have a kitchen. You know, you're subject to eating whatever culinary adventures are available. You never know where you are, you know. So now I'm really enjoying cooking, growing my own food, utilizing that food, and being self-sufficient with my partner and doing real estate. And I'm looking at my new career as being as long as my last one. So my goal is to have a 23-year career as a real estate agent, staying in one place and not touring anymore, because I've already been around the world. So I'm really like the idea of staying put. And I'd like to focus on being a giver, and every day wake up, how can I give? What can I do to other people to help other people? And I'm hopeful that even though, you know, it might be a little late, I'd like to try to have a child. So those are my 4 main things in my life list now. And I'm very comfortable with them. And I couldn't have said those things a year ago. And, you know, transitions are always really difficult. There was definitely time where I was like grasping at straws, but I always had my relationships that were meaningful, meaning my work relationships, and those carried me through. So I could always focus on taking ballet class, doing those shows, having some income during any of the tumultuous times and any of the transition. And now real estate, to finish my whole point, real estate really complements still performing, because again, you make your own schedule and you can kind of have them intertwine a little bit, and you have some movement there. That's what I wanted to say.
Oh my God,
Really?
that's
Early morning income time is the real estate time now.
Yeah.
I love you that out of
you
this
get
whole
calls
webinar,
all the time of day.
What were you saying, Johnny?
Say again?
Out of this whole webinar, when Heather mentioned that she grew her own food, all of us went and zoomed in.
Yeah, you did.
It's
I want to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
It's
guys,
exciting. I mean, it's hard work though, and I just planted like 500 seedlings, and I found my first aphid today.
That's excellent. That's excellent. So we've hit 90 minutes, but there's a number of questions here. So for those who want to stay on the webinar, and if you guys have got a few more minutes, let's do one question, one answer from one person so we can get through all of them so we don't leave people wanting. So I'm just going to scroll down. Who wants to answer the question from Anya? How can you tell if a job is legit, safe, or a scam?
Oh, blimey.
Talk to them.
Yeah, talk to them.
Words.
Yeah.
Don't
Find
email
out.
and text.
Email all your friends.
Somebody better answer the phone.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
For another question from Habib, his local language is Urdu. He can speak and understand English, but obviously not like natives. In this situation, how can I make my space in international industry of actors and directors, maybe in theatres?
You're fine. You're fine.
Totally fine.
People will understand you. Just be kind, be nice, take your time, repeat. Endlessly repeat, because you will say it wrong, because this is not your language. So anyway, but just be nice. You're fine. So
and I think most English speakers, like, we are used to working with people that English isn't their first language. So I laugh at myself, but I have my home voice, which I will be talking once I get back into the kitchen with my mom. But then I also have like my work voice, which is kind of like the one I'm doing now, which is a little bit better pronounced, a little bit slower. And if a French person or anyone asks me 5 times if I can say that again, I'll just say it again, and I'll do it slower and better.
Yeah, that's the
no
thing.
One cares.
Ask again. I'm sorry, I don't get that. What does it mean? What is it? What is that word? I never heard it. And you're fine. Just talk to the people.
And if someone is rude to you for that, just be like, I don't want to work with you anymore then. You're an idiot.
Yeah, no one will ever be rude with you about that. This is impossible. That would be crazy.
Well, I guess he can celebrate that unique aspect though. So it's one of the first things that he would highlight in his marketing, whatever that is, the language abilities. And how it could lend itself in the industry right now, especially when there's more and more roles in commercial work and in film and television and on stage, and for different ethnicities and people speaking different languages and different cultures. It's just broadening. So there's more opportunities, I think more so than ever. So leverage that uniqueness and use it to your advantage.
Another question from a private one. Any suggestion for SMs, ASMs, PAs? I guess that was maybe a question for me. How can we best make ourselves marketable? For me, it's you're marketable the minute that you step outside the door, I think, and it's the same for performers and for anybody. I think, how you represent yourself in front of anybody. You don't know when your next job's going to come from. The janitor, a dancer, a director, a fellow technician. And so being professional in every aspect of it is marketing in itself, I think. Having said that, early on in my career, and even maybe on a bad day, that doesn't always work out. But, your intentions and your ability to get yourself out there and present yourself professionally, going back to what Heather was saying too, rock up as if you're already a professional is something that's super important. And believe in yourself, believe that you're capable. And if the opportunity presents itself for you to take a job, take a role, take a thing, even if it is for free or for very low money. When I first started out, I literally rigged lights, ran microphone cables, soldered microphone. I know how to solder microphone cables, people. Like I did stuff that you would, before I became an actual stage manager, I did really shit work out of university. The first 2 years, I did everything. But like Sophie, I always wanted to do something that was involved with the industry I wanted to be in, because I knew working in a bookstore or something for cash was never going to be a path. And because of that early training, being able to build sets, rig lights, run microphone cables, when I actually became a stage manager, I understood all of the elements of those departments really well. And so that that was such a huge advantage when I became a stage manager, because I understood how long things took. I understood what was the issue. I understood those things. So getting involved in any way that you can in the industry that you want to be in, even if it's on the periphery, is such an important part. And keep putting your hand up when that opportunity comes around and say, yeah, I can do stage management. And you get that little gig and it builds from there. So that's how I would answer that question.
I think people really respect it, actually. Like, if someone comes to me and said, well, I graduated and I immediately got a job, and you're like, well, that's a great story. Whereas if someone says to me, oh yeah, I mean, I was doing this for 4 years, I was scrubbing this and I did this and I did, people in my world, I think if you've told me that you've worked your arse off to get where you are, we kind of just like you more. Like, I'm sorry, but we know that everyone in this industry has worked their arse off from the day one, like they have. And I think people that really have done the bare bones, like soldering mics, like, you know, I think that we believe in you more because we think that you know more, because you've done all these annoying little jobs that most people won't want to do. Like, I feel like you get more respect from it.
All of it.
Yeah.
But also, everybody is a part. Even if you are the head of a show, calling a show, or you're the main person on the stage, you are alone if there isn't a team behind you. And every aspect of that of a theatrical show, as you know, contributes. That's what's the beauty of live entertainment, is that you all need to work as a team. Absolutely. And that microphone cable working is super important.
Oh God, yeah.
So it needs to be soldered well. And I appreciate the people that do it now, because I don't do it. Right. So like, I think that's the important thing. Next question. Do you think, this is a good one, do you think there'll be an overflow or an underflow of people entering the industry and trying to get a job after COVID? What's your thoughts on moving on after this?
I think everyone's going to be hustling. Everyone's like,
yeah. I feel sorry for the people who start in the industry right now. Like, it can be hard for them to be a new dancer in the, and it might be a bit more competitive right after, because everybody lost their jobs. So we just need to find another, I guess.
I don't know. I was thinking, though, it might be the reverse.
Oh, really?
Because I think that the people that are going to be standing when this is all over are the people who really want to be into it, and you have less competition. You have less people getting into it and people falling out of it. It's like a culling of the herd, I think.
It takes a lot of
that's what I'm thinking.
Culling of the herd. Think, Johnny?
No, it's going to happen maybe in real estate too. I don't know. I've just thought about it.
It could go either way, to be honest.
It could.
People that are, like Heather was saying, because if you're at the end of your career and this has happened now, this might be the opportunity where people not necessarily jump ship, but really think about what they want to do with their future. And so that leaves some room for people that are up and coming, regardless of age, to kind of move in. And it's going to be a weird ebb and flow moment at the time when that happens. But I guess we'll see what happens. But everyone needs entertainment, so that will still be alive. It's just a matter.
Certainly.
Wesley asks, have you ever taken a small self-produced show to an international market? If so, how? Anyone done that?
Sophie, have you done that? I have not.
I mean, not. Yes and no. Like, so a couple of shows. I guess not on like a grand scale where we literally started in like a shed and then it became the House of Dancing Water. Like, definitely not that. But like, like in terms of like a couple of the shows that I've worked on in Romania, like, they're not bare bones, but like the way that it works there is that you create a show, and then even though it is like it stays in a resident theatre, the show will play basically so many times a month based on its popularity. And if it's like super popular, then it'd be like once a week. And if it's not very popular, it might be once a month or every 2 months. But then shows last for like really, really long times. Like, I have a couple of shows there. I have 3 shows there at the moment. Well, not right now, but normally I have 3 shows there at the moment. And so what happens is you build the show in the resident theatre, and then often they will go to random festivals like every now and then. So like they will travel around Romania, but then sometimes they'll go to like, there'll be a festival in Norway, or there'll be a festival in Germany and something like that. And even though it's in Romanian, you'll have you'll just be written in English or in Norwegian or whatever language above. So yeah, I haven't personally gone on tour with that, but I don't know, in terms of producing things, like I don't know really what the question's for, whether it's like how do you do that, but like I think I guess it would be you would make it and then you have to sell it like it's a product. And
for me, there's like 3 layers for me, and one is, you know, you make it at a very low budget and you start circulating that through fringe festivals and things like that. The second layer is earning enough credibility in some way, shape or form to earn yourself a grant from your local government and things like that to get yourself onto that stage that puts you on an international market. And then the third level is corporate funding. Now, a lot of people, for example, there's a lot of people in China, businessmen in China, who want to put shows on, right? They're not necessarily connected with people there, but then there's the gap between somebody's got a lot of money and then there's the people that want to produce and create. And it's trying to make those connections. And on an international scale, that's very complex and very diverse and very, very different from country to country. How you're going to produce a show in the Middle East is completely different than how you're going to do that in China or Australia or that. So it's really not like, let me just go tour the world with this show. It doesn't work like that. You've got to start with a relationship. And if you are going to go for the corporate thing, you've got to earn that respect and relationship where that entity is going to trust you to build a show and give you money. Now that's a huge leap. It's a huge leap. And there are some people, and even well-known companies that I know, have been in negotiation with Chinese producers and people who have the money for years because they cannot. That, you know, the Chinese are very, very careful with their money. If they're going to give you the money, and same with Middle Eastern people, like they're going to want to know end to end how you're going to make that show happen and be successful, which, as we all know, in an artistic realm, it's never a guarantee. So, I mean, I could do a whole webinar discussing the complexities of that because I've been producing for the last few years, and I've started to understand on that realm how complex it is, and even just one project to one project is a minefield of things to produce. So I would recommend, if you're trying to produce your own thing, take it overseas. Start, depending on your show and what your situation is it an option to be in the fringes to get notoriety, because that's when people start to pay attention and want to give you funding. Have you got the ability to get government funding? At the moment, this is a terrible time to do it. If you look on a lot of government funding, any grant procedures have been paused or put on hold right now. Nobody's giving any money for new works. There are exceptions, but it's much harder than now.
It's all going online now.
And then if you've got the realm to some corporate pathways, and you have to start building them and focus very laser focus on what market you want to target first before you diversify. Yeah,
I could make a recommendation for a company that's well established out of New York. I'll type it in, but once you have an established product and your company, let's say it's a dance company and you have a 90-minute mixed rep or whatever, a thematic show, whatever it is you have to offer, if it's a packaged product and it's sellable, then there's companies that can market that to all of and connect to those people abroad. And that's how Momix makes its money. It's either a buyout where they buy our show. Let's say we have 5 shows to offer right now. They'll buy the show for X amount of dollars, and then everything's negotiated to fly us out there and make it happen. Or Momix has a relationship where we rent the theater space and then they split the ticket sales. So those are 2 different relationships, but the conduit or the connection for that to happen to get us abroad is through this company. She used to work with Creative Artist Management Incorporated in New York City, a big company. They represent a lot of different dance companies and independent artists too, with a variety of skills. So I will, I'll type that in here. Her name is Margaret Selby, and I've known her for 20 years and happy to share her information.
Excellent.
If that's appropriate. Is that appropriate?
It's appropriate.
Okay.
As long as she's okay with it. Natalie says, when you say you were very careful when offering recommendations, so going back to our conversation before, does that apply to a standard employment reference too? So if somebody worked, would you still provide them a reference regardless? Johnny, do you want to answer that? You may answer that.
Provide meaning like list myself down as a reference for somebody on their CV. Is that kind of the thing?
Or like yes, you worked in this part from this time to this time. The standard employment reference is generally like a confirmation that that person worked for them, and then any additional information that you wanna add, I guess.
Yeah, I would still do the standard standard reference for the most part, just because I think if employers or future employers of this person is going to reach out to these references to have a gauge, then I'd be happy to do that. I feel like if it's somebody that I would never want to work with again, even just the audacity of them asking me would be kind of taking me aback. But I wouldn't necessarily then want to do that just because I don't want to talk negatively about anybody in that sense. But that's never really happened to me. So I don't really have that experience of having to turn somebody down because there's been a couple times where I've been called as a reference and I will just state all the positive things. And if they ask anything specific, I will be as clear as possible without being negative or trying to derail their opportunities. That's not something that I want to do either. But I'll just have to be as honest and as clear as possible and transparent.
I think when you're hiring a lot of people, you can get the vibe from somebody's reference, whether you speak or they're written. For me, if somebody's a rock star and they ask me, you're going to know that person's a rock star. It's going to be great. If it's a more tempered reference, then you know that there was probably other things that you should look at or whatever. And I'm always very honest. So this is where their strengths are. This is where I found a couple of their weaknesses are. But maybe I haven't worked with them for 4 to 5 years. So how do I know that this is, I definitely try to put it in context, because if they're asking for a very small show and it's maybe not the House of Dancing Water, then maybe they're going to be completely fine. So you've got to be very careful about your opinion, because I don't want everybody ever to restrict anybody's career because of my opinion of them. And I think that's a really negative thing to do. And like you say, Johnny, you always say something positive to the person. And I think that's a good thing. These were the things that they excelled at. And always be very clear that the decision is still in that person's hands, unless you like really telling them that, that person's a rock star, you must hire them. And that's, my list of maybe 10 people that I would say is, on that list for my own industry. But yeah, it's a tough one. This is for the dancers out there. For a teenage dancer, what's more valuable, competitive dancing or more conventions?
I kind of did a little private response to that one. I never did dance competitions or the seminar thing. To me, that's very American. But my reply to that when I replied in private was like, just do as much stuff as you can and as many varied things that you're interested in, especially when you're starting out, because I think we didn't actually speak too much about diversity, but I started out my career as a contemporary dancer, and I thought that I need to be in Rambert and Matthew Bourne and all these very kind of classic companies. But then as my career developed, I was like, but actually aerial straps is cool, and pole dancing is really cool. Oh, and I'm going to learn to high dive. Oh, and I'm going to do more choreography, and I'm going to do this. So I would say when you're definitely starting out, take as many classes as you can, just because you actually might like something. And even if you just do a couple of classes here and there or one course of something, you never know if 10 years down the line you're gonna I did a breakdancing course once and I can do the 3 tricks, and you're in an audition and they say, so everyone, we've done all the repertoire, does anyone have any tricks for us? That happens all the time. So you never know when this random course you did once ends up being very useful. Even if you know a little bit, it might actually be very useful for that one audition that you had to do Bharatanatyam, which is a very weird dance technique, like an Indian dance technique. I had to do it at school. I had to do it once in an audition. So random. But I could do it for that one thing. So do as much as you can and find what you like, basically.
And Heather might have something to add to this because she's in that dance world too. But I think in America, competitions and conventions usually come hand in hand, because they try and, if you go to that competition, they'll offer something like that so you can learn from different choreographers and take master classes and whatnot. But there are conventions that are separate, that are also there in the country. And I think conventions are beneficial just because you adopt and learn new styles of movement to be able to expand your versatility. Whereas competition is more about being adjudicated for specific criteria. And I like conventions better just because there's that expansion of learning from choreographers that maybe you could not get to because they live in Los Angeles or they're from New York and you're living in like Minnesota or whatnot. So when those conventions are nearby, definitely expand yourself into that. And if a competition's involved, okay, fine with that studio. But if you can also just get to the convention, that would be great because there's a lot to learn there.
What is
I guess
a good
you also
resume?
can gauge your strengths and weaknesses too, because you're thrown into an environment where there's so many more students than your traditional class. Let's say you normally take with same 10 people.
Yeah.
You don't really have a good gauge or reference point to how much skill, refined skill or talent maybe you have in comparison to the rest of the, well, to a larger portion, larger percentage of, you know, other people who want to get into the industry. So it's good to kind of see, you know, see your competition. And to Johnny's point, but doing the conferences where it's a less competitive atmosphere, but you still have an opportunity to gauge the landscape and see who's going to be at your audition, who you'll be auditioning alongside, you know?
Yeah, absolutely.
A little reality check
Interesting
for you.
Okay. A couple more questions. What's a good resume? A perfect written one or experience mentioned on the paper? How to grab international attention? Any thoughts on that?
Make it clear.
Yeah, something very clear. Like, don't put everything. Put important things, but very clearly.
What is it that you did? What you did in it? Who it was with? What your experience was? And common mistakes too. Don't forget to put your name and your contact information and things. There's some resumes that I get that don't even have a name on it, and I'm thinking, what? Also,
what is happening?
I know. Also, don't send it via Word document. You need to send it as a PDF so it's not changeable and nobody else can modify it. If you send a Word document, anyone can just delete what you wrote or whatever. So make sure it's clear, it's a PDF, and have your actual contact details and who you are on it, because that's, unfortunately, some people forget that. I don't know how that's a thing.
And I would say put stuff that are really your greatest achievements, like in a really good order. So I'm really like funny about formats and fonting. Firstly, use a good font that you can
and
read.
not 500, just like 1 or 2.
And don't use Times New Roman. Oh my God, it's not 2000 anymore. Jesus, like don't use Times New Roman. It's grim. Like,
That's what
at the moment, my resume is actually quite pretty. Like I've got like Cirque du Soleil at the top of the moment, which is cool. But there was a period where I kind of had like my biggest thing was House Dancing Water. Then I had all these other things above it that were like good and interesting, but a bit. So like they were still clear. I wasn't lying or being weird, but I basically put House Dancing Water at the top. And then I kind of then organized it nicely so that it was in chronological order in terms of like dates. But I basically made House Dancing Water the most obvious one and then put all these other ones underneath. Because realistically, if someone's got 50 CVs, they're not going to actually read it. They're going to look at like 1 or 2 things. Ideally, your name, clearly. And then, you know, certain names and things like Franco Dragone Entertainment will shine. And then they'll look at all this stuff anyway. So don't take the piss and just put anything in any random order, but highlight the things that you think are valuable information. And if you're new and you really have no credits, stuff like I guess your college is important. If you've only done workshops and seminars and stuff like that, write who it's with, and try and just push up the things that are. 3 things really. I think that's really, I don't know, probably Johnny and Anna, you can probably tell me like how much of a CV you actually read. I don't know.
If it's more than 2 pages, it ideally should be 1 page for artists. If it's more than 2 pages, I just can't even, like, it's too much information. It's similar to a demo, which is also another in itself.
It totally differs, and I think maybe performance and where I'm recruiting is a little bit different. So I think one of the biggest thing from an international perspective is to really consider that the person reading your CV may not know that director may not know that company, may not know that show. So never make assumption. Here's my 2 tips. Put the international calling code on your phone number, because if you're sending your CV overseas, I don't want to have to look it up to figure out how to call you. Step number 1. Step 2, there's many different ways of communication in the world, and if you're in one particular country, you may not know that the rest of the world may be on WhatsApp or WeChat or Viber or all of these things. So you need to know, if you're going to apply for something in China, you need a WeChat account, and you need to be able to be contacted by the WeChat account, because that's how China is going to call you. They're not going to call you on the phone. So you've got to do some research about where you're applying for, and also be very specific. I always recommend to put the link, because you can hyperlink a company, if you've worked for a company, of their website to the listed thing, because then if they do not know that company, they can click on the link and they can see a bit about that company, and they know more about it. I get a lot of CVs, and I know nothing about some of those places. I know a lot more now, having hired people for 10 years, but when I first started out, I knew nothing about the directors. I'd get CVs and they would mean nothing to me. And also for me, it's like, what actual skills have you have? Don't list me what you've done, because I want to know. Don't expect for me, I'll just say from probably a stage management perspective, what a stage manager does in different countries is very different. So what you perceive as a stage manager may be not what I perceive as a stage manager. So it's really important to explain what you did in each role. But really, international calling code, multiple ways for communicating too. So WhatsApp, Viber, WeChat, whatever it is, and make sure that people understand the company, the director, the things, not just listing it. Don't assume that they understand what that is, because you need to spoon feed the information to them. You control how they see your information, not them having to go Google and search it, because nobody's going to do that.
No, everyone's lazy at the end of the day.
Aileen Marie, I've had many conversations about international, and I've looked at probably about 700, 800 CVs in my life, maybe even more. Aileen Marie is asking, are you listing cancelled shows in your CV on your resume, or what are you doing with this current situation? Yes?
Yes, definitely. I've been super fortunate to work for a couple of shows that we did literally 1.5 years, even longer, of creation, and it actually never premiered. But you still worked. I worked for 1.5 years, and it was tiring. It doesn't matter that it didn't premiere. You still did the work. So put it on there.
Yeah.
Anyone else?
Done.
Well, this all happened while I was still working. So it's still relevant because, we were working. And I think that's important to know that you were doing something. So I would put it on.
Absolutely.
And I would put references at the bottom. If you haven't worked yet and you're only putting in your training and your school shows you've done, remember to put your mentor or your teacher that you trust and that you have a relationship with, with their permission, put their contact directly there so they can follow up too. Because I'm telling you that goes a long way.
Yeah.
Because they're more interested maybe in the content of your character too. That's important.
Absolutely.
You want to have that verified.
And on your resume,
Wonderful.
you can also put the link of your demo. That's what I do. I find that very useful. Like, you just have to click on the resume and all your information are in one.
Yeah.
One spot. Awesome. Well, I think we've answered all of the questions, and we've almost hit 2 hours. So, wow. Thank you so much, guys, for spending 2 hours talking to everybody here tonight.
Thanks for having us.
Really, really.
Oh, that's
really
smiling.
Anyone who's still online, if you'd like to suggest any, I'm just going to send you my email address, any other sessions you'd like to hear artistically or anything like that, please email me. We're continuing to do some webinars throughout this COVID period. It's a wonderful time to catch these kind of people when they're not. It's so difficult to get, say, these 4 people together when we're all working. So it's wonderful time to capitalize on this situation right now. So send me your feedback and also other suggestions if you'd like to. And thank you so much, guys, for spending 2 hours with us today.
Absolutely.
Yeah, this was wonderful. Thank you. Nice to see you all.
It's an honor.
You too.
Cyberspace.
Be safe.
Okay. Hugs and kisses.
All right, guys. Turning you off now.
Right.
Have a great day, night, evening, morning.
Love you.
See you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.